Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to take a final look at the Week 11 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. Going to do a position-by-position breakdown of this week's slate, quarterback through tight end. Talk about the guys that I have the most interest in for this week. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about every single player on the slate just because I don't want the video to be too long. So, the 5, 6, 7 guys that I really like at each position, those are going to be the guys that we do talk about in this video. So, before we get started, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. If you are new to the channel, be sure to click the subscribe button as well. I do upload a ton of NFL content to this channel. I usually get up 3 to 4, sometimes 5 NFL videos a week. I also will be making videos daily for NBA once NBA returns in about a month. Gonna have a ton of content coming out. Be sure you are subscribed and click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. So that way you never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy these videos and if they do help you out a lot and you want to get more content from me, I have stuff available on Patreon. You can check that out, link down below in the description if that does interest you. The Patreon is always linked down below in the description. But let's go ahead and take a look at this Week 11 slate. We'll start off at quarterback, where we have another slate where, a lot of the top guys that we've been playing this season, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, those guys are not on the main slate. So our most expensive quarterback this week is Lamar Jackson, $7,300 in a matchup at home against the Titans. So I really like Lamar Jackson this week. I think he is one of the better pay-up options overall, just because of how, thin the position is to begin with. We don't have the top pay-up options that we're used to paying up for. Lamar is a guy that I've still been playing quite a bit this season. I know he hasn't been nearly as good as he was last year, but he's still shown plenty of upside, still has that elite rushing upside, which is the reason that we want to roster him. Can go for 100-plus rushing yards, can get you the 100-yard rushing bonus, can also throw for 200 yards and multiple touchdowns. He doesn't have the upside that like Kyler Murray has shown. I mean, Kyler Murray has been awesome this season, has shown that he can go for, 300-plus passing yards, 100-plus rushing yards. I don't know if we're going to get that out of Lamar Jackson, but the rushing upside always puts him in play, especially on a slate where we don't have some of the other top options. I like the matchup as well against the Titans. The Titans have, I believe, allowed, in terms of fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, they are top 10 in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing QBs. It is a pretty good spot for Lamar. $7,300, you could argue, is a little bit too low of a price tag, especially because, we don't have some of the other pay-up options. So I like him a lot as a, top-tier play. If we do look at Yahoo's pricing, I think that's where Lamar looks the best. He's actually not the most expensive quarterback over there. Patrick Mahomes is available on Yahoo on the main slate. Yahoo does include the Sunday night game, and that's when the Chiefs play. So if you want to play Mahomes at $39, you could definitely look to him. But Lamar Jackson's only $32 on Yahoo. I think that's a really good price tag for him. Definitely like paying up for him over there. The pricing in general on Yahoo is always pretty soft, so you should be able to pay up at quarterback. Definitely like Lamar at $32 on Yahoo, and even on Draftkings as the most expensive quarterback at $7,300. I do prefer him over Aaron Rodgers. I think I'd prefer him over Herbert, although I do like Justin Herbert this week. Just straight up, I think I'd give the slight edge to Lamar for $7,300, but Herbert, definitely like him here against the Jets. I don't know if he's going to be like a cash game play for me, but in tournaments, if you want to stack him up with Keenan Allen, I think that makes plenty of sense. I like Keenan Allen a lot this week. You could look to Mike Williams as well. Herbert's just been as consistent as it gets, man. Since he's taken over as a starter, 19-plus Draftkings points in every game, giving you such a high floor. The ceiling is there as well. He's had one big ceiling game, and that was against Jacksonville in Week 7 when he had 41 Draftkings points. Herbert hasn't really, besides that week, he hasn't really broken a slate. Normally this is a guy that's getting you probably 22 to 26 Draftkings points, but he still has that upside. He can throw for 350 yards and 3-4 touchdowns. He does have some rushing upside as well. He did have 66 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown in that game against Jacksonville. He had a rushing touchdown last week as well. I do like Justin Herbert at $6,800. I think in tournaments, you could definitely look there. There's some viable cheap receivers from the Jets as well. Brashad Perriman's out again, so that does bring a guy like Denzel Mims into play. You could maybe look to stack up Herbert and Allen, and then run it back with a guy like Denzel Mims, who is very cheap, and we'll talk about him when we do get to receiver. But I do like Justin Herbert at $6,800. I think in that $6K range, he's one of my preferred options. I like Deshaun Watson as well against New England. I think this is definitely a bounce-back spot for Deshaun Watson. Going back home, playing in Houston, that's where he's just always played better throughout his career in the Dome. Always had better splits at home. And, that win game, the weather in that Cleveland game just really dampered things. I mean, Watson only threw for 163 yards, only 1 touchdown, had 14 Draftkings points, probably one of his worst games of the season. I would expect a big bounce back game from him this week. The Patriots are a solid defensive team, but when it comes to a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, I don't really get too worried about matchup proof. He's pretty much been matchup proof this season. Can throw for 300 yards, multiple touchdowns against any team. Doesn't really matter who he's going up against. I think in tournaments, he's another guy that's in play. If you want to stack him up with Will Fuller, run it back with a guy like Jacoby Myers, who's a really good play, a really good value this week. You could always look to do that in tournaments. I don't know if these are guys that I'm going to be considering like in my main lineup in cash games, but Herbert, Watson in tournaments, I do have a good amount of interest in. So we have a situation with the New Orleans quarterbacks. As of Friday morning, when I'm recording this video, we don't know yet whether it's going to be Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill starting at quarterback for New Orleans. We just got word right before I started recording that Taysom Hill was actually working with the first unit and that he was getting starters reps and that, the signs were pointing to Taysom Hill starting. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but right now things are looking that way, that Taysom Hill's going to be the starter. So I was on Jameis Winston at the beginning of the week. I think he's one of the better plays overall if he does start. But right now things are not looking like that. Things could change. Obviously, we still have, 2 more days till the slate starts. Like I said, I'm recording this Friday morning, but right now it doesn't seem like Winston's going to start. So I guess we can't really go to him at 5,900. Obviously, we're not going to play him if he's not starting. So for that reason, I think going to a guy like Joe Burrow makes a lot of sense. Burrow, 5,500. He's the other value quarterback that I'm really interested in this week. The price tag's just too low on Burrow, in my opinion. I know he had a bad game last week, but that was a really tough matchup, brutal game environment, having to go into Pittsburgh to face a really good Steelers defense. Now he gets to face Washington, who's also solid defensively, but much better matchup overall. The price tag came down on Burrow, and this is really just a guy that I always have interest in, mainly due to the pass attempts. I mean, you look, this Bengals team, they just throw the ball a ton. Burrow's going to throw the ball 40, 45 times a game. I'm pretty sure so far this year he's leading the league in pass attempts, or at least he's close to it. The volume alone, how many times he's going to throw the ball, puts him in play, and the price tag 5,500 is a price that he can easily, blow out of the water. I mean, we saw against Cleveland 38 DraftKings points, against Indy 20. Like, this is a guy that has a pretty high floor. In a matchup like this against Washington, a game that I think, total's kind of been rising. This game opened with let me see what the total is now. Yeah, opened at 45.5. Since then, it's been bet up to 47. We don't really have like any monster totals this week. I believe the highest totals right now is at 51. So, a 47 total, that's pretty high for this slate, given that it's only 4 points out of, the top team or the top game, which is the Saints and Falcons. I like Burrow a lot as a value QB. I just think he's too cheap. The fact that he's going to throw the ball 40 to 45 times a game just makes him a viable option, especially at this price. So not knowing the status of Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, like not knowing who's going to start there, I'm going to prefer to go to probably one of those two guys, whether it's Hill or Winston. I think one of those guys is going to be in my player pool for sure, depending on who starts. But because we don't know the status of that, we don't know who's going to be the starter, I think Burrow just to fill in as of now is like an early core. 5,500, he is a really good value quarterback this week. But like I said, if Taysom Hill starts, I think for 4,800, I mean, Taysom Hill might not be the best passer overall, but this is a guy that has massive rushing upside. Like, he could probably, I don't know how they're going to use him if he's the starter. Are they going to run a lot of running plays? Are they going to let Taysom Hill run the ball? Are they going to let him throw the ball? Like, my best guess is he probably throws the ball, if he starts, he probably throws the ball 20, 25 times, and he probably runs it, 10, 15 times. We know when they get down to the goal line, like, they'll let Taysom Hill punch it in, especially if he's going to be the starting quarterback. I mean, we know Sean Payton loves to give Taysom Hill the ball. I mean, 4,800 for a guy that has the rushing upside that he does. If he is announced the starter against the Falcons, a great matchup at home in a great game environment, like, I am definitely interested in Taysom Hill this week as a value quarterback, assuming that he is announced as a starter. I think he's one of the better values, and then we'll need to keep an eye on the status of Teddy Bridgewater. We don't know his status yet as of Friday morning when I'm making this video, but if Teddy Bridgewater is out, I like P.J. Walker a lot as a value quarterback, assuming that he does start. He's also the same price tag as Taysom Hill. Between the two, it's pretty close. I think both guys are pretty similar in terms of skill set. Both guys have good rushing upside. Taysom Hill Probably not as good of a passer as P.J. Walker, but, you know, P.J. Walker showed a lot of upside in the XFL. I didn't watch much of the XFL, but I know he was, like, one of the best players overall. Showed a lot of upside, and if he gets announced as a starter this week, he's only 4,800, gives us plenty of upside at this price tag, does have some rushing ability. It gets a matchup at home against the Lions, pretty favorable spot overall. You know, depending on what happens with Bridgewater and with the Saints QBs, you know, who's going to start there. If Taysom Hill starts, if P.J. Walker starts, I think both those guys at 4,800 are really, really good value quarterbacks. I think, you know, honestly, in cash games, you could definitely consider one of the two, especially a guy like Taysom Hill. Just his rushing upside alone is going to bring him into play. And, you know, he could maybe throw for 150 yards and a touchdown. That'll just add on to it. I like him a lot if he is announced the starter, but that'll be news that we have to keep an eye on heading up to Sunday. We'll need to watch that throughout the week. But let's go ahead and move on to running back now and talk about the running back position. So a position where I think we definitely want to try and pay up this week. Both Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook are in really good spots. Alvin Kamara at home against the Falcons. Dalvin Cook at home against the Cowboys. You know, between the two, I think I do give the slight edge to Dalvin Cook just because I think his workload is a little bit more secure. I think his touchdown equity is higher as well. You know, I would be a bit worried about Kamara if Taysom Hill starts, because I think if they do get down to the goal line, like, they will definitely let Taysom Hill run the ball in rather than handing it off to Kamara. That is one concern for me, but it's a fantastic matchup. It's hard to not like Kamara this week. I mean, the Falcons have just been terrible this season defensively. Against running backs, quarterbacks, it really hasn't mattered. They haven't been able to slow down anyone. We know Kamara is just going to get massive usage. I mean, he'll probably get 12 to 15 carries in this game. Probably going to get some looks in the passing game as well. You know, with Hill at quarterback, if he does wind up starting, will Kamara see 9, 10 targets? Probably not, but he should still see 5, 6 targets. Should probably see 20 touches overall. And at 9,200, you know, he's definitely in play. I do like him a lot as a pay-up option. If I can fit him and Cook together in my main lineup, I want to try and do that, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. If we get, you know, Hill as a value quarterback, or if we get P.J. Walker as a value quarterback, then maybe that'll make it easier. But if I can only choose one of the two, I think I do give that slight edge to Dalvin Cook. I like Cook a ton this week. He is more expensive than Kamara on Yahoo. He's actually $6 more. But honestly, if I can find the salary, I think I do want to try and get up to Dalvin Cook just because the matchup is so good, man. The Cowboys, they haven't been able to slow down anyone this season. Their run defense has not been good at all. So far this year, they've allowed 157 rushing yards per game, which is second most in the league. We know Cook is going to get massive usage if they're playing with a lead, which is most likely going to be the case this week. We'll see Dalvin Cook get 25, 30 carries. He did that week 10 against Chicago last week. Got 30 carries against Green Bay, 22 against Detroit. Like, as long as the game doesn't get out of hand, Dalvin Cook's going to be on the field, going to be their goal line back. Like, if they get down to the goal line, we know they're handing it off to Dalvin Cook, which is one of the reasons I prefer him over Kamara, just because if the Saints get down to the goal line, are they going to turn around and hand it off to Kamara? Who knows, especially if Taysom Hill starts, whereas we know the Vikings, you know, when they get down to the goal line, it's 3 straight runs with Dalvin Cook. They're just going to let him punch it in. It's a great matchup. He's just such an explosive back. He gets usage in the passing game as well. I prefer him over Kamara just slightly. You know, Kamara hasn't been confirmed that he's playing this week. That is something we're going to have to watch. He was a non-participant in Thursday's practice. Like I said, again, I'm recording this on Friday morning, so we don't have Friday's practice reports yet. I assume Kamara plays, but definitely keep an eye on that. Obviously, if he were to somehow sit, Latavius Murray would become an awesome value play and would be close to a lock on both sides, but you know, I'm assuming that Kamara does play. So between Kamara and Cook, I think I do give the slight edge to Dalvin Cook. I just like the matchup a little bit more. I like his touchdown equity, and I like that, you know, he's probably going to see 5, 6, 7 more touches than Kamara will. But then once you get off those two guys, you know, in the mid-range, there's definitely some viable plays here. Like Mike Davis, I think, is in line for a bounce-back week against Detroit. It's already been announced that Christian McCaffrey is going to be out once again. Since McCaffrey went down, I mean, just the last few weeks, week 8 against Atlanta, against New Orleans, and against Tampa Bay, you know, Mike Davis was not very good. He was not efficient at all in those games. You know, some tougher matchups, though, against Tampa Bay. New Orleans have a solid run defense. You know, it was kind of surprising to see him struggle as much against Atlanta as he did. But Detroit, they've been one of the worst teams so far this season at stopping the run. I'm pretty sure in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs, they're like towards the top of the league. It's a great spot for Mike Davis. The price tag did come up, obviously, but you know, he is definitely in play in this mid-range if you do want to go to him. I like James Conner a lot in tournaments. I think people are definitely going to be looking to the Pittsburgh passing game. Ben Roethlisberger, Chase Claypool, Juju, Deontay. Like, I'm hearing a lot of those guys being talked up this week. I'm not really hearing anyone talk about James Conner. So if people are going to go to Pittsburgh's passing game, I mean, the way do you get leverage in GPPs is just to play James Conner and hope that, he scores the touchdowns. So far, the last 2 weeks, he's obviously not done that. Just 4 and 6 Draftkings points, but this is a guy that does have a lot of upside. He's going to get a lot of usage. He's going to be on the field a ton. Pretty sure he played over 90% of the snaps last week, even though he only saw 15 touches. Look, we know if Pittsburgh gets down to the goal line, like, it's not a lot that they're going to turn around and hand it off to James Conner, but he's at least going to be out there when they do get down to the goal line. He's at least going to be their goal line back. Has plenty of upside, can definitely go for 100-plus yards and multiple touchdowns. Does get some usage in the passing game. Jacksonville is a team that I've looked to target this year with opposing running backs. They haven't given up some big games to opposing running backs. So I like James Conner in tournaments. I think he's going to be very low owned. I have interest in him at 6,600. Ezekiel Elliott in tournaments as well, I have a lot of interest in. Zeke's been terrible without a doubt just the last 3 weeks, but the Cowboys are getting Andy Dalton back, which is a plus. It's also one of the best matchups they've had this season against Minnesota, or at least since Dak Prescott went down. Like, they've had some tough matchups against Pittsburgh. Not the best spot going into Philadelphia on that Sunday night game, going into Washington. Well, now they get to face the Vikings, who have been terrible defensively this season. We know Zeke's going to get the usage. He's still been getting 20 touches over his last 2 games. He got 20 touches in both those games. Can he be more efficient? I guess that's a big question mark. But if there was ever a spot for Zeke to finally get right and to finally put up a solid game, I think it is going to come this week against Minnesota, against this Vikings defense that, has been terrible this year. So I do like Zeke a lot in tournaments. Another guy that I think is going to be pretty low owned, both him and James Conner should come in low owned this week. But DeAndre Swift is really the main guy that stands out in this mid-range. He's 6,400 on DK. Over on Yahoo, he's coming in at $23. Assuming that he does play this week, he's one of my favorite running back plays on the slate. We'll have to keep an eye on his status. He's another guy that missed practice on Thursday. He got diagnosed with a concussion. I'm pretty sure he's in concussion protocol. This is obviously huge news and something we're going to have to monitor heading up to Sunday. Right now, I'm assuming that Swift plays, but it's really a 50-50. We don't know at this point. We'll just have to keep an eye on it. Assuming that he does play, I mean, there's not a better spot you could ask for him here against the Panthers. The Panthers have been terrible against the run this season, haven't been able to stop any running backs. We know Swift is going to get the usage. He got the usage last week. He was announced as the starter last week against Washington and got 21 touches in that game. I'm pretty sure he played over 70% of the snaps. They finally used him as like a workhorse running back. I would assume that continues this week. With how well he played last week, there's really no reason for them to get away from him, to go away from him in this game. So if Swift is confirmed playing, and there's no limits or anything, I wouldn't assume there would be if he plays. If he's playing at 6,400 against this Panthers defense that can't stop anyone, especially against the run, I like DeAndre Swift a lot. I think it's 6,400 on DK, $23 on Yahoo. He's going to be popular, but really, really good play. I think overall he's one of the better running back plays in that mid-range. But then just like scrolling down, obviously we talked about the status of Alvin Kamara. I'm assuming Kamara plays, but if somehow he does not, 5,900 for Latavius Murray. He actually got priced up a good amount, but he would still be a really good option against the Falcons if Kamara were to sit. Antonio Gibson, really good spot against Cincinnati, 5,800. You could definitely look to him in the 5K range. Keelan Ballage against the Jets, you could go there. He got good usage last week, received 23 touches, 18 carries, 5 receptions. They've been using him a lot just the last 2 games. He's kind of been their number 1 running back, and I would assume that continues once again this week. So if you want to go to Ballage, he could be interesting. Joe Mixon doesn't look like he's going to play again, so Gio Bernard, 5,500's in play. Duke Johnson, though, is probably my favorite guy in the 5K range, 5,400 against the Patriots. Patriots, solid defense overall, but Duke Johnson's going to get massive usage. He got massive usage last week. He just wasn't very efficient. It was just a bad game overall against Cleveland. The weather, the wind in that game just really dampened things. Both offenses weren't able to get going. There was only 17 total points scored in that game. I'm expecting a really big bounce back game this week from the Texans team, just from their offense as a whole. I think we're going to see them be way more efficient. We're going to see them finally put up some points. This game does have a high total as well. It's one of the games that's seen a rise in the total. Opened at 47. Since then has been bet up to 49. So there's definitely some stack appeal in this game. Does have some potential to shoot out. Duke Johnson, 5,400, gonna get probably 15 to 18 carries. Should get some work in the passing game as well. He wasn't good last week, but I'm not going to let that scare me off of him. Should continue to get the usage with David Johnson out. So I like Duke a lot at 5,400. I think as a value, a cheaper running back, he makes plenty of sense. But other than that, I think we kind of covered the running back position, at least the plays that, really stand out to me. So let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver. So another big injury we're going to have to watch heading up to Sunday is the status of Davante Adams. As of Friday, when I'm making this video, as of Friday morning, he's been held out of practice just the last 2 days. He didn't practice, I believe, on Wednesday or Thursday. So things are not looking great for Davante Adams. I assume he still toughs it out and plays. I'm assuming like a lot of these questionable guys play, but, we don't really know at this point. If Adams does play for 8,600, he's not that expensive. You could definitely look to pay up for him, but I think there are other receivers I like for cheaper. Davante Adams, he's going to be one of those guys that you can play every week. I don't really get worried about matchup with him. At this point, he's pretty much a matchup proof, but there are some guys cheaper that are in really good spots. Keenan Allen is one of those guys that I like a lot this week. He's 7,400 on DK. Looking at Yahoo's pricing, you got Keenan Allen coming in at $25 over there, which I think is way too low for Keenan Allen. Definitely looks like a great play on Yahoo at that $25 salary, but even at 7,400 on DK as the third most expensive receiver, I still think it's a really good spot for Keenan Allen. It is definitely a bounce-back spot for him. He was disappointing last week against Miami, no doubt. I was very heavy on him, and he really, he killed a lot of my lineups. Just 3 catches for 39 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets. But who on the Jets is going to slow down Keenan Allen? I don't see anyone doing so. We know the volume is going to be there. He's pretty much seeing double-digit targets in just about every game that Justin Herbert has started this season. Only saw 7 last week, but I would expect that to trend back up. To see double-digit targets this week. Right now, this game does have like a 10-point spread, I think, which is, I guess, the one concern. Like the Jets or the Chargers are very big favorites here, but they still have a 27 implied team total. I mean, they're still implied to score nearly 4 touchdowns. If Justin Herbert throws 3 touchdowns here, which is probably going to happen, 1, if not 2 of those are probably going to go to Keenan Allen. At 7,400, he's expensive, but I like Keenan Allen a lot. I think this is one of the most talented receivers in the league. He's a great route runner. He finds ways to get open. He's got massive upside. Can easily go for 100 yards and multiple touchdowns. Can break a slate at any point. He's my favorite pay-up option at 7,400. There's definitely other guys I like in that price range. Michael Thomas, I think, is a really interesting option. If Taysom Hill starts at quarterback, I would definitely bump down Michael Thomas. But if Jameis Winston starts, I still like Thomas a lot for 7,300. On the other side of that game, I think both Julio and Calvin Ridley are really good plays. Calvin Ridley is coming in cheaper, so I think I'd actually prefer to go to Ridley here. He's another guy that we'll have to keep an eye on his status. Was limited in practice on Thursday, but he had a bye week to rest up. I'm assuming that Ridley does play here against the Saints, and for $7K, in my opinion, that's too low of a price for Calvin Ridley when this guy's healthy. We see this happen a lot. When players get injured, their price tag just drops for some reason. It's happening with Kenny Golladay. It happened with Calvin Ridley. There's no reason this guy should be $7K, especially in a game that has a 51 total and that's projected to be a shootout. I like Ridley a lot. I think he's my preferred Falcons receiver to go to. I think in tournaments, if you want to stack this game, stack up him and Matt Ryan and then run it back with Kamara or running back with Michael Thomas, you could do that. Or you could play Taysom Hill either naked or with Michael Thomas and then maybe run it back with Calvin Ridley. Honestly, if Taysom Hill starts, I'd be fine playing him naked. I don't think you really need to stack him with anyone because, he's such a good runner that he can do it himself. He doesn't have to throw for 3 touchdowns to really hit his ceiling. So I like both Falcons receivers, but between the two, I prefer to go to Calvin Ridley. I think Ridley and Keenan Allen are by far my 2 favorite pay-up options at receiver. But then in the 6K range, if you want to pivot off of Dalvin Cook, I think the way you do that is by playing the Minnesota passing game. The reason, if Cook were to fail this week, I think it would be because, he doesn't score any touchdowns and we see Kirk Cousins throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns. And if that happens, you're going to want to have exposure to Adam Thielen, to Justin Jefferson. But between the two, I'd rather go to Adam Thielen. I think Thielen just gets more volume overall. His target floor is a little bit higher. I think his upside is a little bit higher. His touchdown equity probably higher as well. But both Vikings receivers are definitely in play. Obviously, I wouldn't play them with Dalvin Cook unless, you're doing that in cash. That could be fine, but in tournaments, if you want to stack up Cousins and Thielen and then fade Dalvin Cook, that does make a lot of sense. You're going to gain a lot of leverage. And if Cook somehow fails and doesn't score any touchdowns and just really doesn't have a solid game, the way that happens is either he gets hurt, which, we don't want that to happen, but he either gets hurt or he just doesn't score any touchdowns. And if he doesn't score any touchdowns, that probably means that Kirk Cousins is scoring all the touchdowns and that Adam Thielen probably has 1 or 2 as well. I do like Adam Thielen at 6,300. I like the matchup against Dallas. This Cowboys secondary is not good at all. So I like him in the 6K range. In tournaments, you could look to Will Fuller. If you want to stack him up with Deshaun Watson, you could do that, 6,200. But then, down in the 5K range, plenty of plays here. Another injury, we're going to have to keep an eye on the status of T. Higgins. He missed practice on Thursday. If he winds up out, that would be a boost for both Tyler Boyd and A.J. Green. You could obviously look to stack one of those two guys up with Joe Burrow. But if Higgins plays, he's fine to go to. You could stack him up with Burrow if you want. Kenny Golladay, I've been having interest in, but obviously he hasn't been playing. It doesn't look like he's going to play again, so can't really go to Kenny Golladay. But if he does play, 5,800 for Kenny Golladay is a really low price tag, especially for a matchup against the Panthers. We'll need to keep an eye on his status. But DJ Moore, I think, is probably my favorite play in this 5K range. I was on him last week, and he came through for me. Had a solid game, 4 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Finished with 19.6 DK points. The price tag was really low last week against Tampa Bay. He was only 5,100 on DK. He's not that expensive this week. He's 5,600. Didn't see too much of a price bump. Even if PJ Walker starts, I still like DJ Moore quite a bit. Now, if Will Grier starts, which I don't think is going to happen, but if Will Grier starts, I would definitely bump down both DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, and I probably wouldn't have any interest in either guy overall. But if PJ Walker starts, I still like DJ Moore quite a bit. I think PJ Walker is a talented quarterback. I think he'll be able to get these guys the ball. He's my favorite play in the 5K range. It gives you some positive correlation if you want to play DeAndre Swift and then run it back with someone on the Carolina side. I would definitely look to DJ Moore. Looking at Yahoo's pricing, he's only $18 over there. I think that's where I have the most interest in DJ Moore. Under $20, he looks like one of the better options. Between him, Jerry Jeudy, Deontay Johnson, Michael Gallup, all those guys are $18. I think I would prefer DJ Moore over those guys. It's close between Deontay Johnson and Moore. Deontay Johnson, he's been awesome just as of late, been shown a lot of upside, gets another good matchup this week, but I think I do prefer DJ Moore over him. I'm just a guy that I really like DJ Moore overall. I think he's a really talented receiver. He's someone that I have been right on this season. Whenever I've played DJ Moore, he's treated me well, so hopefully this is another week where he treats me well. I do like him a lot in that mid-range. I think 5,600 on DK, $18 on Yahoo. He's one of my preferred targets. Amari Cooper, I think, like I said earlier, this is a week where Dallas can finally get right. I think we're going to see some of these Dallas guys finally have a good game. And Amari Cooper's only 5,400 against a very bad Vikings secondary. He's a really good play as well. Him and Moore I like a lot in the 5K range. Under 5K, though, now if we're talking about value plays, Jacoby Myers, 4,900, have a lot of interest in him as a value. He's just been really good the last 3 weeks. He's been the #1 receiver for the Patriots, really since Julian Edelman went on injured reserve, and since Julian Edelman has been out, it's been Jacoby Myers just getting all the volume, 10, 14, 7 targets last 3 games. He's been producing even in tough matchups, and now he gets to face Houston, a Texan defense that I'm not worried about at all. I like Myers a lot as a value. I think he makes a lot of sense under 5K. Another guy that I want to talk about as a value is really, really cheap. I don't think he's going to be really popular this week. I haven't heard many people talk him up, but Michael Gallup's only 3,700. Against this Vikings secondary, I like Michael Gallup a lot as a value receiver. We talked about Amari Cooper, and Cooper is really, really cheap. CeeDee Lamb's also cheap, but 3,700 for Michael Gallup I think is just way too low of a price tag. The guy's seen 19 targets over his last 2 games, and now he gets a matchup against Minnesota, a bad Vikings secondary, a bad Vikings defense overall. The Cowboys are getting Andy Dalton back, which is definitely a boost over Garrett Gilbert and over Ben DiNucci. I think Dalton is a better quarterback over those 3 guys. Like I said earlier, if there was ever a spot for the Cowboys to finally do something on offense, to finally put up points, it's this week against Minnesota. I think this game does have some shootout potential. We've already got Dalvin Cook in our early core, so running it back with someone on the Dallas side I think makes some sense, especially if we are expecting this game to shoot out, which I think it can. Right now it does have a 47.5 total. I like Gallup a lot. I think 3,700 is too low for him. Just too low of a price tag for a guy that's seen 19 targets his last 2 games. He's one of my favorite plays under 4K. There's really not much value at receiver under 4K, but Michael Gallup, 3,700, is one of my preferred options. And then obviously, if T. Higgins sits, you could look to A.J. Green for 3,600. He'd get a boost if Higgins were to miss. But let's go ahead and hit on tight end real quick just before we end the video. So tight end, kind of similar to quarterback. We don't have a lot of the top tier options. No George Kittle, no Travis Kelce, no Darren Waller. So our most expensive tight end is Mark Andrews for $4,900. I think Andrews is the best pay-up option at tight end. Look, he hasn't had a great season, but this is still a guy that gets good usage. Going to see probably 6 to 8 targets. We know they target him a lot in the red zone. He has a lot of touchdown equity. Like if there's any tight end on the slate that could score multiple touchdowns, it's going to be Mark Andrews. I've already talked about how much I like Lamar, so if you want to stack up Lamar and Andrews, I really do like that in tournaments. I don't think that's going to be too popular of a stack. So Andrews at $4,900 is one of my preferred options to pay up for a tight end. I think there's other guys in this mid-range you could look to, like Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst for $4,400, even maybe TJ Hawkinson for $4,200. But between all the 4K tight ends, 4K and above, Mark Andrews for $4,900 I think is my favorite option overall. But then once you get under 4K, there are 2 guys I really like under 4K, Austin Hooper and Dallas Goedert, both in the same game. So Hooper, he burned me hard last week. I played a lot of him. He was one of my highest owned tight ends, and he just had a terrible game. Only 2 targets, 1 catch for 11 yards, finished with 2.1 DK points. I'm kind of chalking that game like it was just a bad game environment. It was a low total. The wind obviously had an effect. I didn't think the wind was going to have much of an effect on like short and intermediate passes, but both these teams last week, Houston and Cleveland, just didn't pass the ball at all. Both of them just ran the ball a ton. That shouldn't be the case this week. We don't have to really worry about the wind, so I like Hooper a lot at $3,900. Philly has really struggled to tight ends this season. In terms of fantasy points allowed to the position, I'm pretty sure they are top 10. I think they might actually be top 5 in terms of fantasy points allowed to tight ends. So really good spot for Austin Hooper. No Odell Beckham Jr. out for the season. Should continue to boost his target floor. I think we're going to see Hooper see 6 to 8 targets most weeks. Should be looked to in the red zone as well. At $3,900, I like him as a value. And then on the other side, Dallas Goedert for $3,800, I think is also a really good value play. Got 6 targets last week. Finally, saw good volume in his first game back from injury. Only 1 target, 1 catch for 15 yards was obviously disappointing, but got some target volume last week. I think things are just going to continue to trend up for Dallas Goedert, at least until Zach Ertz comes back. I don't think Ertz is going to play this week. It doesn't look like he's going to be activated in time, so Goddard should be in line to, start again at tight end. And last week against the Giants, I'm pretty sure he played like over 85% of the snaps at tight end, close to 90%. I believe it was like 60 out of 67 snaps or something like that. He was on the field a ton, got targeted 6 times. Look, whenever Ertz was out last year, we saw Dallas Goedert he was getting targeted a ton. He was used heavily. This Eagles offense is a little bit different this season. They do have Travis Fulgham, who's emerged. They have Jalen Reagor, who they drafted, but still, Goddard should be in line for 6 to 8 targets while Ertz remains out. And against Cleveland, another team that has struggled against tight ends this year. They've pretty much always struggled to tight ends. I do like Dallas Goedert as well as a value tight end. So overall, I think at the position, Mark Andrews, Austin Hooper, Dallas Goedert, those are probably my 3 favorite tight ends. And I think, there's other guys in the 4K range. Probably my favorite besides Andrews out of all the 4K tight ends. Like my next favorite would probably be Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst, his volume has just been so secure. 7, 7, and 8 targets last 3 games. Double-digit Draftkings points in 4 straight games. He's another guy that's just going to get good usage. Going to be on the field a ton. He's probably going to see 6 to 8 targets. It's a great game environment against the Saints. High total, 51 total. Likely shootout. Like Hurst, Andrews, Hooper, Goddard. Probably my 4 favorite tight ends this week. So I think we covered the tight end position. And I think we broke down the slate as a whole, guys. Quarterback through tight end. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I do really appreciate you watching. If you did enjoy, hit that like button before you get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. And if you have not yet, if you want to check out more content that I do have to offer, more of my exclusive content, that is available on Patreon. Link down below in the description. You can check that out. Link down below if that does interest you. But best of luck this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. Good luck, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.